What is up, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome to today's foggy video on the Rat Potential YouTube channel. It's probably gonna fog up again. Welcome to humidity. Anyways, we are going to be playing with some Weber stuff today, and hopefully waking up the entirety of my neighborhood this evening, because that is what we do. We got some fresh mandarin oranges. It's a great soothing drink for a hot summer day here in Tennessee. You might notice that it's a little darker than when I normally get home from work, and that is because I've been doing some work to the mountain bike jumps, and I rode my mountain bike, my dirt jumper, for probably like, I don't know, an hour or so, half hour, trying to just envision what I'm building next and making sure everything's flowing good, which we're good. So, what are we changing today? If you've noticed on this video series, although it does take a while in each video to figure out an issue, the thing that I do is I only change one thing at a time. If you change two things, then you don't know which one caused whatever. So you gotta only change one thing at a time. So right now, we're gonna go pull the emulsion tubes out, and I'm gonna put these F7 emulsion tubes in the car. Now, the reason we're switching emulsion tubes, okay? I'm going to set the whiteboard down and we'll explain this a little bit to you, even though there's a lot of good books and stuff out there that really explain this, but I'll give you the lowdown. So basically, how an emulsion tube works is that it mixes the air and the fuel, okay, and gives you like your vapor mixture that gets squirted out into the car. So this is an emulsion tube right here. This is what this looks like. This is the jet side right here. This is the air bleed side up here. So this sits in a DCOE. It sits like this. Air comes in the top, fuel comes up from the bottom and gets squirted out somewhere in the middle and goes wherever it goes. Now, you're going to notice, and I'll show you the other ones once I pull them out too, there's holes in the side of this. Basically, what a different number emulsion tube is that moves the holes up and down for the air bleed side and up and down for the fuel side. And what that does is changes the rate at which they mix in order to either bring A, more fuel in sooner, or B, more fuel in later, or more air in sooner or more air in later. Basically, controlling your transient throttle. So while I was chasing a lean spot on my transient throttle and thinking it was in the idle circuit because I was barely getting into the throttle, I was actually wrong. At least we'll find out if I was. And I think my emulsion tubes weren't coming in soon enough. So I have F11 emulsion tubes in it, which is a pretty standard emulsion tube for rotary guys. But, be it that it is full bridged, it is getting a lot of air really soon. That's a 50 millimeter with 48 millimeter choke tube. So it's a big carb, and it's only those two blades. So if you imagine you just stab it, it's going to get a bunch of air. So I'm going to need to bring the fuel in sooner. So the F7s bring the fuel in a lot sooner. Now, the F7s are from recommendation from somebody that I know that works on carbs. He's like, try these. They'll probably be good for you. They bring the fuel in pretty quick. So that's what we're doing. So basically, I drew this up like a little thing to kind of explain the Weber stuff. But you have your idle mixture. Screw down here controls your idle. This is like RPM, fuel, whatever. Your idle circuit is working through here. Your emulsion tube controls how the main circuit comes in, where it comes in, and all that stuff. And then that works out the rest of it. So, it's just been a lot of reading. And I know that these videos are helping you guys to not have to do that. So, but if you still are struggling, there's information out there. So what I'm going to change today only is the emulsion tube. We're going to leave the jets and the air bleeds the same that are in there. We're going to see what it does. And so let's get to swapping them. So this is just the emulsion tube, the shiny brass bit. This is your jet holder, the threaded piece. Down here at the bottom, this hex part is your jet, the actual orifice. And then up here, if you pop the jet holder off, just like that, this is your air bleed up here in the end. So the air bleed and the jet, this is your jet. Basically mine is a well, that says 40, but it's huge. At least that's the decipherable number. I feel like it's a 240. Yeah, it's a 240. 240. And then my air bleed is a 165. So I'm going to pop these apart, slap them in the new ones, right? If you look closely at these two emulsion tubes, you can see the diameter is different, the location of the holes are different. The F11s has more holes up here and here, these are down lower. It's just a whole different piece of brass, right? So it should change things a lot. Alright guys, so got the emulsion tubes in. Had to swap out the old camera battery we're going to throw. This battery hooked up. Y'all may laugh, but every single one of my hobby cars, we'll say, my fun cars, my rotary cars, etc., I use the same Optima red top battery in pretty much everything around here. And you're like, why do you do that? Why don't I just have batteries for everything? Well, I had batteries for everything. They all died. And that's what happens when cars sit around and don't get driven all the time, is the battery goes dead. Then you gotta jump it, and that's just a super inconvenience. So what I do instead, I just got one battery. I just put it in different cars and you're good to go. I mean, you don't need to reset your radio presets every time you drive your car to the car show. Like, whoop-de-doo. This thing sounds so good. Probably like my favorite sounding rotary car that I own. And probably just my favorite sounding rotary car like ever. I mean, y'all might be like, oh, the 787B is so sick and da-da-da-da. What about 3 rotors? Well, hey, I can't afford one of those yet, so, you know, I don't even worry about 4 rotors. That's a whole nother league of their own. That's like saying this sounds better than like a V12 Lambo. It still has that bog, I don't like that. Oh, it's not as bad though. Hear it? Yeah, baby. We do gotta go to the gas station, so I am gonna rip this thing into town, fill this baby up with gas, throw some corn premix in it. Dang, I love this car. Alright, so I'm gonna like level up the game here, and we're gonna put a suction cup on with this camera, so that way y'all get to ride along. Alright guys, so I apologize for it being a little dark, but the sun runs away from you sometimes. So basically, the emulsion tube change helped a little bit. However, you just heard it, and you'll see it in the GoPro footage ripping it around. It's still missing, and it's still going lean. And it's just right on that tip-in. So I really, maybe I ought to try a different one. But imagine you had like an 1100 horsepower car and you're on the interstate and you're going 80 and you need to pass somebody. So you're barely going to ease into the throttle and you're going to walk them. Basically that's what I'm doing, like throttle change. So basically like going from, imagine like holding a quarter throttle and just barely pushing it a quarter of an inch. That's where that initial move is where this happens at. Now, but it's not like, it's not a squirt of the accelerator pump kind of feeling, you know what I mean? I don't know. I'm gonna do some reading on it and I'll close the video out tomorrow after I do some more reading, because I figured that emulsion tube would have helped that. But what I wonder is if my main jet's too big or too small. I don't know. The kid at the gas station goes, thing is built for speed, and I was just smiled and fired it up and did a nice burnout out of the gas station, but it wasn't too bad. So it's the end of the Weber video, and I wanted to address what I'm going to change moving forward. So how a Weber works basically, and this is like the lead up to what I'm going to change. So when you crack the throttle blades open, or when you just have, we'll say like a pipe that is flowing a fluid, we're going to consider air the fluid for now. So you've got this pipe through here, right? And Q is flow rate, and we're just going to say this, Q in and Q out, right there. So these two have to be equal, right? So Q is going to be like a volumetric flow rate. You could have cubic feet per second, or the metric variant. Basically, flow rate equals a velocity times an area, and this is a circle, right? So that's your area. Velocity is what it's throwing through there. Now, how a Weber works is it requires an air velocity in order to draw fuel out of the venturi. So you have your venturi that's vertical right here, and as the air flows past it this way, vacuum, it draws fuel out of that orifice in the perpendicular plane. So basically, the reason you run a choke tube in a Weber is to make this diameter smaller right here. Okay, and then your blades happen up here, so that when you stab the throttle and it draws air through here, just move the venturi into the choke because that's where it is. But basically, when you stab the throttle and air moves through here, the diameter changes, which makes the area smaller. And if you make the area smaller, but Q stays the same, the velocity has to go up. So you get a velocity increase across the venturi, and what that does is pulls the fuel out faster or slower, right? So imagine if you have just a straight tube and you suck an air through it, you're not going to get any velocity change through the thing, but if you stab the throttle, you might have basically a velocity of 0 for that split second, and you're not going to get any fuel draw. So what I'm thinking is that maybe mine is doing that. And I'm getting to, I'm to the point now where I have a 50 millimeter carb body and my choke is 48 millimeters, and that's not a big variation in diameter, so that's like getting a velocity drop pretty bad right there, and it's not able to make up for it, because if you imagine the flow rate's also controlled by your throttle position, right? So if you take this number and if your throttle blade, we'll say, is at 10% open, okay, so you're taking a 10% of your area, and you immediately change this 10% to 70%, right? The flow rate is going to be whatever it was at this 10% with this slow velocity when you're driving around real slow. But if you crank that to 70%, the area is going to go up really fast, and the velocity is going to go down because Q has to stay the same. Now, Q stays the same for 1 instant in time. Okay, so Q will be changing as you are increasing throttle position, but if you do it so fast for that split second, you're going to have like a 0.00001 velocity, and you're going to have a 1,000, 10,000 area, respectively, to get 1 rate of volumetric flow, whereas you could accomplish the same thing with having 1, you know what I mean. So, basically, I'm going to order a set of 40mm choke tubes, which you're going to immediately think, why would you do that? It's going to slow down the airflow so much on the top end, because the choke really has its effect at like transitioning into throttle. So when you stab the throttle, and it needs to increase that velocity to make sure fuel stays coming out. So I'm going to get a set of 40mm chokes, throw them in there. It's probably going to really coop the car up on the top end, but the key thing is, and this is I think why they sell 40mm and none other size, is because you can take a 40mm choke tube, which is the inner diameter is 40 mil, and make it bigger. But you can't take a 48mm choke tube and make it smaller. So I'm going to get the 40s, and they're expensive. They're like 30 or 40 bucks a piece, so that's like 80 bucks. And then I'm also going to get a smaller air corrector for my my main circuit. And the reason for that is because I think there might be too much air present in the emulsion tube when I go to stab the throttle. And what that's going to do should richen up the entirety of the emulsion circuit of my main circuit. And then that should help with that stab. But I think the choke tube is going to make a bigger difference than changing the air bleed. But if I'm paying shipping to get parts here for this Weber, I'm going to order both. So that's what to look forward to in the next video. The emulsion tube helped, but did not fix the problem. And the drop in velocity thing makes some good sense, because it's really only when I'm changing the position of the throttle blades is when it's getting mad. If I hold like a constant throttle, it's okay. However, the only time that is interesting to me is if I'm trying to go up a hill and holding a constant throttle, it'll go lean. So it's pulling a lot of load. So it's pulling good load, pulling good vacuum through that carburetor, good stable airflow at that constant throttle, but it's still going lean, so that's kind of why I'm changing some stuff on the emulsion circuit. So I don't think that the main jet, the fuel jet, is necessarily right or wrong, but we're just going to start changing these other things, and we'll see how it works. And if we need to, we can go back and always change the main jet. So to put into perspective as well, the cost of all the changes I have been making, an idle air corrector is $6. I've ordered 6 of them. So that's $36 worth of idle air correctors. Emulsion tubes are $20 a piece. So that's 40 bucks right there. So what are we at? 70, 80 bucks? Almost 100 bucks. After I order choke tubes, will be over 100. And air bleeds are like $4 or $5 a piece. So we're looking at about 100, 150 bucks, ideally up to this point, to get this carburetor running right. So, plus the cost of the carburetor, maybe I should have just went fuel injection. That's kind of the next step. So, we'll see if we can get this dialed. I know we can. We just gotta get there slowly but surely, trying to learn and keep you guys informed along the way. So, thanks for watching. Stay tuned for more Weber stuff. We're gonna keep playing with it, and yeah. Subscribe if you want to see some more cool rotary content. Getting ready to put an engine in a car today. So, rock on. Keep it rad. Thank you.